1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Therapy Backstage. I'm Joh Knyn, an Australian psychologist and your host. And this is the podcast where we talk about what actually happens in the therapy room and why. So if you're a client, clinician, or just curious, this is your invitation backstage. Today's episode is called Why Does My Therapist Ask About My Childhood? But first, thanks for being patient with me for episode 3. Not only am I your podcast host, but I'm also a practicing psychologist here in Australia with a full caseload of clients. So I'm really glad that I'm back here making episodes for everyone. So today's episode is why when you're in therapy, your therapist might ask about your childhood. It might feel a bit cliche at first, like something out of a TV show or a movie, but there is a reason why I and so many therapists ask about your childhood experiences. And today we're going to break that down, why it's relevant and part of the therapeutic process, how it may influence you as an adult client, and what to do if talking about childhood feels too big, too much, or unsafe right now. We'll also chat a bit about attachment styles, what you can notice in yourself, and I'll give you some tips that you can take to your next session with your therapist. So why does your childhood matter when it comes to therapy? Let's start there. Put simply, our earliest relationships, those with our parents, shape how we see ourselves, how we see the world, how we expect others to interact with us, and what we learn to believe we deserve. From a psych perspective, this includes how we attach to others, our attachment style, how we regulate our own emotions, and what kind of strategies we've learned to survive stress, rejection, chaos, or conflict, interpersonal and intrapersonal. This doesn't mean I'm saying childhood causes all of our problems, but it can be a place in therapy to start understanding where our patterns may have developed in our way of coping with big emotions and the world and people around us. If you've heard the term attachment style before and thought, oh, that sounds like some sort of quiz I could do online, but been unsure of what it really means, let's talk about it. Attachment styles reflect our patterns of behavior and emotional responses we exhibit in our relationships with others. These patterns are shaped by how safe, seen, and connected we felt to our caregivers, our parents, when we were children. Based on attachment theory by John Bowlby, that's Bowlby, there are 4 main styles: secure, avoidant, anxious, and disorganized. Let's start with secure. A person develops a secure attachment as the result of feeling secure with their caregivers or parents from childhood, and being able to receive reassurance and validation without punishment or rejection. Ultimately, this person feels safe, understood, comforted or soothed, valued, and emotionally seen during these interactions with their parents as a child. An adult with secure attachment is able to regulate their own emotions. They can soothe and comfort themselves. They're able to build deep, trusting relationships with other people and feel safe to seek support from other people. However, if a person did not receive that level of care and validation during childhood, they may develop a different attachment style, like avoidant attachment. An avoidantly attached person or non-securely attached person may have real challenges in building healthy, lasting, long-term relationships with other people and have difficulty with being emotionally intimate. They may prioritize self-sufficiency or independence, such as being hyper-independent, and may seem uninterested in close, deep relationships or appear detached. This is because when they were a child, their caregivers or parents were likely distant, expected the child to be independent, either by leaving them to fend for themselves or praising when they were independent and kind of punishing them for when they needed something. As children, a person with an avoidant attachment style might have experienced a lot of rejection from their parent for expressing their emotions or needs. Consistently seeing that our parent is disinterested in their emotions and needs. But what if the caregiver or parents were inconsistent in their attunement to the child's needs? Then they may develop anxious attachment. This is where the adult fears rejection, abandonment, and depends on their relationships for validation of self, and depends on their relationships to regulate their own emotions, unlike a securely attached person who can do that themselves. When a child experiences inconsistent care from their parents, sometimes they received some care, and at other times they didn't, the child can understandably become very confused and anxious about when they may get their needs met. If they're not sure whether, they're going to get their needs met, feel seen, heard, validated, then they would almost anticipate that each time might not be the time they get their needs met. This would create a lot of stress and anxiety in any person. Lastly, our disorganized attachment. One of the most common reasons a person has disorganized attachment is because they've experienced abuse, neglect, or trauma as a child, beyond the inconsistency received from parents that led to an anxious attachment. Children whose parents were a source of comfort at times, but also a source of fear, leads to disorganized attachment. As adults, it can feel like a push-pull dynamic when trying to build relationships. That deep human desire to be close and connected to others is often a source of strong fear or even terror. It's important for you to remember, though, that your attachment style is not your fault. It isn't a character flaw. It simply helps us understand more about how you developed as a child during those early years when your first relationships, those with your folks, shaped how you began to view how the world works and how you work within the world. So hopefully by now we can start to see that when your therapist asks about your childhood, they are trying to get a picture of your attachment style and how that may have developed. Not just asking to be nosy or avoid the actual issue you've said you've come in for. What if I'm not wanting to talk to my therapist about my relationships with other people, Joh? I hear some of you ask. Great question. As we've talked about, attachment and our very early experiences in life also teaches us how we connect with ourselves, our emotions, and how we learn to cope with things. Even if you are there to talk to your therapist about issues with your own thoughts and behaviors, separate from personal or professional relationships, having your therapist understand your childhood experience helps them understand how you relate to yourself, how you cope with big feels, why you may choose to do or not do something in the face of stress. It helps us as therapists understand the beginning of you. It is an important part of your life story and can really inform how treatment may progress. But what if what if talking about childhood does feel too big or too much or unsafe in therapy right now? That's okay. Your therapist's job is to meet you where you are at. As we've talked about in previous episodes, your therapist is not there to make you feel worse, to push for some agenda that they think is best for you, or to just watch you cry or suffer for their own entertainment. Your therapy sessions are just that, your therapy sessions. You are allowed to say, I'm not ready to go there. Or it's actually really hard to talk about my childhood. These are small ways that can sometimes feel really big depending on your attachment style. See what I did there? Linking content. These are small ways you can set boundaries with your therapist, which we know is a healthy part of any relationship. Here's an example with Kerry being our fake client. Kerry's seen a therapist for a few sessions now, and that dreaded question comes up. Therapist. So, Kerry, is it okay if we talked about some of your childhood experiences? Maybe this is where Kerry starts to dissociate a bit or takes a really big sip of water to avoid the question for a moment. And if you're interested in learning a bit more about dissociation, leave us a comment anywhere on our socials. So, Kerry, is it okay if we talked about some of your childhood experiences? Kerry. Well, I had a really tough time as a kid, and I don't think I'm ready to go there. Therapist. I hear you. Talking about our childhoods, especially when we've had tough ones, can be really hard. Kerry. Yeah, it's just something I haven't done with anyone before. Therapist. Thank you for letting me know that. It helps me understand why this might be a hard topic to talk about. Is there anything that you need from me to feel more comfortable or to feel more supported in being able to talk about some of your childhood experiences? Kerry. To be honest, I have no idea. Therapist. That's okay. Why don't we start there? We can talk about what it might look like to talk about your childhood? Like meta therapy. What would that process look like? Or maybe feel like before we actually talk about it? How does that sound? Here the therapist meets Kerry where she's at and validates that it is okay to not want to go there and have no idea how to feel best supported to talk about her childhood. This is part of therapy, not knowing how to talk about something and your therapist validating that. Because, to be honest, if you knew how to do therapy, what the answers were, how to solve this problem or this issue already, you would not be there. It is okay that you don't know. It is okay that it feels really big. It is okay to have no idea where to begin. That's part of therapy. It can be scary and overwhelming. And your therapist is there to support you at your pace. So, I'll invite you to think about these questions, whichever one resonates with you. If you don't already know, what might your attachment style be? Are you secure? Avoidant? Anxious? Or disorganized? Are there parts of your childhood you may not be ready to talk about with your therapist? And is that something you could tell them? Like, therapist, I have never talked about my experiences in grade school, and I would not know where to start. And lastly, how might your childhood experiences be impacting or influencing the way you interact with yourself or with others or with the world? As always, thank you for joining me backstage. I hope this episode has helped make sense of something that can feel formal and clinical and allowed you to see how talking about your early experiences as a human can help your therapist understand you as an adult and what may be a layer that is perpetuating or continuing the issues that you're there to talk about and work through. If you did find this helpful, leave us a review or share it with someone who is contemplating going to therapy or may need a peek behind the curtain of what to expect in therapy. If you've got a "why does my therapist" question you'd like me to answer, send me a message on Instagram at Therapy Backstage. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any future episodes as I get back into recording. And however you found your way here, I am so glad you did. This is your invitation backstage anytime. And I'll see you soon.